All right, my people, we have a breaking news right now, and this one is coming straight from Kano State. The entire city is on fire with massive protests. Thousands of Muslims, Ariwa youths, and even northern elites have stormed the streets in anger, protesting against US President Donald Trump. Before we go deeper, please like and subscribe, because we'll be exposing a lot in this video. And what we're about to reveal will shock you, because it's clear now that this issue has gone far beyond politics. It's turning into something much deeper. Now, according to multiple videos circulating online right now, the protests in Kano are huge. Streets packed, banners flying, people chanting in Hausa, and on almost every placard, you can see mocking images of Donald Trump, some even burning his posters publicly. One of the protest leaders, speaking in Hausa, said something that caught global attention. Let me translate it word for word. These bandits, these so-called terrorists, are our sons, our brothers, our fathers, and our uncles. We do not want anyone harmed or killed. We oppose US military intervention in Nigeria and reject President Trump's actions. That was the message being preached loudly through megaphones as the crowd chanted in agreement. In other words, these religious and community leaders are openly defending the same people the US government has labeled as terrorists. According to the reports, this massive protest was organized by Islamic groups across the north to counter Trump's recent remarks about persecution of Christians in Nigeria. Trump had earlier warned that if the Nigerian government fails to stop the killings of Christians, the US would take military action. And now, this protest is the direct response to that warning. The protesters carried placards that read, "We condemn Trump's threat to attack Nigeria. There is no Christian genocide in Nigeria. America wants to control our resources." You can already see the direction this is going. They've turned a humanitarian crisis into a political and religious standoff. Now, here's the twist. While the northern protesters are defending the bandits and opposing US interference, the Nigerian government is also backing their claims. Officials are saying that the so-called Christian genocide is false, that there's no religious war, and that Trump's comments are just a way for America to interfere in Nigeria's internal affairs. But my people, this is where Nigerians, especially Christians, are beginning to get angry. Because the question now is simple. If these bandits are killing innocent villagers, burning churches, and kidnapping school children, how can anyone call them our brothers and fathers? And this is why many are saying that Trump might be right. Because this open defense of killers by religious leaders is exactly what exposes the deeper problem Nigeria refuses to face. Let's be real. These protesters didn't come out for justice. They came out to protect the very people causing chaos in the country. They're not angry that people are dying. They're angry that someone from outside dared to call it out. And that's why Christians across the South and Middle Belt are reacting sharply online tonight. One person wrote, "Greater than, these are exactly the kinds of things Donald Trump loves to see. And when he does, he strikes even harder." Another wrote, "Now I'm confused about who these terrorists really are, because none of these protesters look like bandits, yet they're doing exactly what terrorists would do if given the chance." And my people, that statement cuts deep, because maybe, just maybe, we've been looking in the wrong direction all this time. Maybe the real problem isn't the men hiding in the forests. Maybe the real problem are those living comfortably among us, in fine clothes, smiling on TV, pretending to be peaceful, but secretly protecting the killers behind closed doors. Because how do you explain this? Ordinary citizens defending terrorists, opposing justice, and protesting against help meant to stop bloodshed. It shows that the problem in Nigeria isn't just the violence, it's the mindset protecting it. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous. Because for the first time, the world can now see clearly that the war against terrorism in Nigeria is not just a military fight. It's a war of truth versus denial. So, my people, that's where things stand tonight. Kano State has exploded with anti-Trump protests. Northern leaders are defending the bandits, and America is watching closely. Because if Trump sees this, and you know him, he won't ignore it.
This AI tool is better than 11 labs for one-time cost.
If Trump sees this, and you know him, he won't ignore it.
There is nothing Trump said or alleged that is not substantially true. The fact that the Nigerian government has ignored the reality of a genocide is not in doubt. The fact that the Nigerian government has been complicit in that genocide is equally beyond argument. These are things that most of us have been saying, including me, in books, in speeches. We've been saying this for over 10 years. So it doesn't require Trump to speak to the truth of what is happening. It is because it is Trump that has spoken that all this brouhaha is happening. What has Trump said that hasn't been said by multiple Nigerians within Nigeria?
The issue is for many who are listening to Donald Trump say these things and, the words that he used, guns are blazing. Yes, in many ways, it could be that we've forgotten what the message is and focused on the messenger and how the messenger made that message. However, an intervention or an invasion, is that something that you would welcome?
See, Trump did not threaten an invasion. Don't let's kid ourselves. There are multiple evidence of Nigeria going around cap in hand. We've become essentially in the hands of our rulers a beggar nation. The same country that went to stabilize Sierra Leone, stabilize Liberia, is the same one that cannot fight Iraq tag army of Fulani extremists and Islamist jihadists simply because persons within his government and his military have compromised his territorial integrity and discounted the safety of his citizens. That is why it has taken a Trump to be breathing the riot act and be telling us that if we won't do it, he will come do it. Let's focus on the fact that we have these problems. Let's leave the fact that we don't like the language of Donald Trump. Let's forget all these attempts at beating up nationalistic fervors. It makes no difference to the dying man in the Benue Trough and in the platoon who comes to save him. You have reported cases such as Yelawata, where you have a military forward operating base less than a kilometer from Yelawata. Instead of engaging with those who killed over 200 Nigerians, they were busy shooting in the air. And then you want that person to bicker about whether it's Americans who came to save him. It is a function of the serious failure of the Nigerian state that we're even having this kind of conversation in the first place. But I am not interested in the nationalistic propaganda that has been coming out in response to Donald Trump's incendiary language. If we will tidy up our homes, if we will do the right thing, Donald Trump ran to count for nothing. At the end of the day, Nigeria is not Somalia. It's not some small homogeneous community where you can come. There are more nuances to our issues than the black and white that Donald Trump would like to paint it. But the reality is that the irresponsibility of the Nigerian government is what has led to a situation. Our situation might be likened to that of an irresponsible father who has allowed his home to fall into disrepair, his children left them to serial abuse, and then a neighbor who happens to be more responsible, however garrulous you might call him, however much you might deprecate his method, he recognizes the humanity of the children that the father has left irresponsibly to be slaughtered. The man went to he went to Benue almost a week after the massacre. He couldn't even be bothered to go to Yelawata. What did he say? Oh, the road was bad, but he could have a party in Makurdi. Please, if that is what it takes, if it will take a madman to speak to our irresponsible rulers, so be it. Or has he lied? And he hasn't threatened the invasion. He said, go and do it or I will do it. Why can't you focus on doing it instead of focusing on I will do it if you don't do it? It wasn't responsible for the Americans to talk about gun blazing. How many times have we gone to ask them to come and help us? And then they can see that we are irresponsible and complicit in the mess we are asking help for. Please, I'm not focusing on Trump's language. I'm focusing on the failure of our own government and the serious failure of the Nigerian state.
Well then, Mr. Farotimi, let's talk about that failure. Do you think there's a Christian genocide in Nigeria?
Let me put it this way. Religion is a matter of identity in northern Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians are completely ignorant about the history of religion in northern Nigeria. So if it quacks like a duck, walk like a duck, we should surely be able to call it a duck. That is what has been happening all this while. And these communities have been screaming and screeching all this while. And the reality is that we are all lying to ourselves if we do not admit to the fact that Christians are targeted, particularly in the Middle Belt and in northern Nigeria. Deborah Joseph is not an animist. An entire community found the grace to be silent when a young woman was murdered and burnt within the confines of a higher institution. What has happened? When those persons were charged to court, how many people came out to offer free legal services to them? What has happened to them? Where is the accountability? Where is the accountability? And then they speak to a genocide and we want to quibble about it. Let's leave the name they want to call it. These are human beings that are dying. What about Mr. Jackson? A man was attacked on his own farm. He struggled and managed to free himself. The attacker still pursued him. He killed his attacker with the attacker's knife. Our Supreme Court deemed that a murder. You have a system that discriminates deliberately, and then we are still quibbling. Let's leave the terminologies and all of that and focus on the facts. Whether the person is Muslim or Christian, Fulani, Ijaw, Yoruba, Lantan, it does not matter whether he's Atia. The important thing is that this person is not only human, he's a Nigerian within the Nigerian space, and the Nigerian state has serially failed him.
The fact that this has been going on for so many years, does that point to some kind of collusion with the Nigerian government, or are we just talking about irresponsible leadership here?
Let's be clear about something. When the facts are not in dispute, we shouldn't argue with that again. We all are equally aware of the fact that the Emirates convicted persons for funding terrorism in Nigeria and shared that intelligence with the Nigerian government. Nothing has ever happened to them. Nnamdi Kanu is holed up in a jail cell today, in a DSS cell. But Bello Turji is busy strolling around, issuing ultimatums. They are going around, sometimes in convoys as strong as 500, and Nigerian government is negotiating peace. Look, the narratives we have created is one that denies the truth. But the truth continues to slap us in the face on a daily basis if we care to look. Reality is, whether we call it genocide, whether we call it irresponsibility, whether we call it complicity, the reality is that what is happening in Nigeria is intolerable. That somebody somewhere found the grace to get involved to the point where they are telling us, go fix it or we'll come fix it. It speaks to the height of irresponsibility that has come to characterize Nigeria, its governance, and everything connected to it. But it does not shift the truth, and it does not change the fact. There are people dying in droves, and the government, for whatever reason, the same Nigeria that could once enforce peace in faraway land is no longer able to enforce peace in his own country. It was Abacha that said, when insurrection, insurgency, insecurity last longer than 24 hours, government is involved. Let them ask themselves what has happened to us.
Some have said that calling the insecurity in Nigeria or defining our insecurity based on religious lines would be a little simplistic. I got an analogy recently where someone said our insecurity in Nigeria is like soup. There are too many ingredients inside of it. It's even gotten to a point where you can't exactly separate the ingredients. There might be some genocide going on in there. There's land grabbing going on. There's banditry. There's kidnapping. There's a business going on in here. So a lot of things have led to where we are, which in many ways is why the Nigerian government is saying, listen, President Trump, we hear you, but what you're saying is based on wrong intelligence. There's more to it than you think. What do you make of that?
And there really is very little that is unique about our situation. What is unique is that for the first time, somebody has spoken and our government is listening. So what I was saying in essence is very simple. Don't come into Nigeria gun blazing. But there are sufficient body of laws within the international community that should serve as sufficient to deal with the situation he was describing. If you say there is a genocide, you have more than enough to work with. And I can't recall a single place that America has gone gun blazing that has had a happy ending. So I wasn't looking for anything gun blazing. But the fact that they are complicit persons is beyond argument. Beyond argument. And so if America is really, really that keen on helping us, I would imagine that those are the kind of help that they can extend to us that wouldn't even create any measure. There will be no need to come gun blazing.
Mr. Farutimi, we do have to go on a break right now. When we come back, we'll be examining Nigeria's response to this situation. And then, of course, there are so many conspiracy theories out there and suggestions on how the Nigerian government and the American government can work together to get the best out of this unfortunate situation. So please stay with us on Hard Copy. We'll be right back. On Hard Copy. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Hard Copy right here on Channels Television. Mr. Dele Farutimi, human rights activist and author, joins us tonight as we discuss this unfortunate situation that has split our country along religious lines with different narratives from government, from the people, from the communities, from rights activists, just to make sense of what's happened and where we are going after this situation. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's examine the Nigerian government's response so far. And I wanted to also get your thoughts on something Professor Wole Soyinka said recently, describing Donald Trump as a petty bully, likened him to Idi Amin. What do you make of that in the wake of this situation that we're dealing with?
Well, that Donald Trump is a bully is a fact that shouldn't be in any dispute. But as bullies go, he's my favorite bully in the wide world right now, because there are many more bullies in Nigeria than Donald Trump, whose bullying affects my life directly. When people bully me into accepting the fact that they are building a kilometer at 22 billion, and I have nothing to say about it, I can't even bleed. Those are bullies. When people bully me and slaughter unknown number of people at the toll gate, those are the bullies that concern me. The bullies that went to Yelawata and murdered over 200 Nigerians, I'm worried about those kind of bullies. Donald Trump is a bully that is very distant, and everything is bullying, and everything has minimal effect on my life. And in recent time, the fact that he's bullying the Nigerian women class and scaring the bitches out of them makes me very, very happy. The fact that somebody in the Bentley, someone on the Plateau, is going to sleep better tonight simply because Donald Trump has held the fate of the irresponsible rulers of Nigeria to the fire. I am so happy. He's my favorite bully in the wide world, and I'm loving that bully right now. But I don't want him to come to my country gun blazing. But he's a bully that I'm loving. All of a sudden, the security agencies in Nigeria appear to have opened up. I love that bully. I don't love his language, but I can't argue against the truth of what he has said. And if that is why, yeah, I'm sure the people of Nicaragua and multiple countries will consider him a bully.
I was just going to say, people in Nicaragua, people in Gaza, people talk about what moral standing does he have to accuse anyone of a genocide against Christians? Isn't he carrying out some kind of genocide in Palestine? People have talked about that. And then, of course, talking about the fact that, look, in Gaza, you're not just killing Muslims, you're killing Christians there as well. So what gives you the moral right to stand on anyone's shoulder and declare yourself the savior of Christians?
Hypocrisy is the fuel of international diplomacy. That is why one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. I am not going to be concerned about the fire next door, or rather, did I say next door, in the next town, when my own roof is on fire. Fact of the matter is this: let us deal with the reality that has been painted for us. Some of us have held up mirrors for a while, showing Nigeria the fact of its ugly nudity, but it refused to change. We spoke until we've been horrors. We even spoke until we landed ourselves in prison. But now, somebody from outside is the one telling them the truth is not devalued in the mouth of a liar. The question is, has Donald Trump lied about the killings? Maybe you don't like the fact that he has called it a genocide, which is a very political word to use, especially when they have all these crevices to hide behind and everything. But it doesn't change the fact that unacceptable casualties have been taken within the boundary of a country that proclaims itself to be at peace, whose rulers gallivant all over the place. As people are being buried in mass graves, and we are still quibbling over what name Donald Trump is calling it. He's calling it. There was one imam a few years ago who was honored for hiding, God knows, countless number of Christians
in his mosque in Plateau.
Who are the people hunting those Christians? The only thing that qualified them for death was their faith, and their faith is linked to their ethnicity. Because as I told you at the beginning, religion is a matter of ethnicity, is a matter of identity in northern Nigeria. That's why the northern Christian is not the same as the southern Christian. All these pentirascals in Lagos and everywhere can be lying about whether there is genocide or no genocide. The Ekwa pastor who is burying his church members and tribesmen in droves, he knows what is happening to him. When he knows that he can't even go back to his ancestral land without risking death, he knows that it is genocide. So I don't need Trump to tell me what I have seen and heard within, and I have been using the word genocide to describe what is happening in Nigeria for close to 10 years. Now all of a sudden, people whose ears were blocked and were not listening are suddenly listening. It's not because they care. They don't need Trump to tell them what's happening in their country. They are complicit in what is happening in their country. That they are suddenly bleating now is because they know that all of a sudden, somebody crazier than them is asking questions of them, not because something strange is being told to them. They already are aware of the fact of the killings, and if they don't want to call it a genocide, they don't want to call these things massacres, even though they themselves have been directly complicit. They were there in Lekki, they were there in Zaria. So it's nothing new. These are persons exercising the powers of impunity extended by the Nigerian state and the insurance that comes with that nothing will happen, they can do as they care. No consequences. How many of these murderers are in prison? Instead, they will say they are repentant. Where have you ever heard that nonsense in the world? Repentant terrorists. You are calling people bandits. You are calling genocide, farmer headers clash. What nonsense.